Welcome to our podcast On the Ground Up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their successes, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron in Villarreal, and here with us today we have Matthew Busel, the co-founder of Whalesync, a startup that's raised $4 million in funding. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great. So a little bit about Matthew. Matthew is the co-founder of the no-code data automation platform Whalesync. Prior to Whalesync, he built products for startups, including MarketSpace and NextRev, and co-founded recruiting startup Referral Board. He's also the author of Game Changer, How Augmented Reality Will Transform the World of Sports. Matthew, before we dive in here, I'm always intrigued by people that write books and authors. What was the inspiration behind writing a book, and what specifically is the game changer you wrote about?
Sure. This is, a couple of years ago now, but this was back in 2017, 2016, 2017, really, when VR and AR was, just starting to, I think, become a little more mainstream and be aware, in people's minds. And I got just thrilled about the space, and we're seeing it come to fruition now with Apple. But back then, wanted to explore some of the things that AR could make possible. Didn't have, let's say, the funding to go, attack something the way that a Magic Leap might with a couple $100 million. And so I felt my first step there that I could provide something of value was to share a book and share my learnings.
That's great. Yeah. It's a goal for a lot of people to write a book, but to actually accomplish it is great. Now, you have a startup, Whalesync, and we're going to dive into this. But before we do, talk to me a little bit about the startup world and what inspired you to get into technology and really start to get into wanting to create your own company?
Yeah, it's a good question. I grew up very much in a time where technology, right, was like taking over the world for my generation, with starting with like the Wii and the iPhone and all that. But I didn't grow up writing code like a lot of, I think, founders do today. And actually went to school for international economics. And so at the time was exploring different spaces, careers and whatnot, and ended up with an internship at a product development agency in Washington, D.C. And that was really my first exposure to the startup world, like not just big tech, but like 5 people in a room trying to build a brand new product. And it was just like, it was game over for me. Once I saw what that was like and kind of what building, again, new products could be, I basically just committed my whole career to it. And obviously the book and VR AR was one side of it, but we can talk about it more, but kind of following my career into product kind of all stemmed from that.
That's great. As a founder, it sounds like you founded a company before this, and then you have this company. Is that correct? Is this your second company, or is this your true first startup?
Yeah, it's technically it's my second, although I like to think this is more as my first real one. The last startup, basically I built while I was at MakeSpace, I was a product manager there, and noticed a problem around referrals. Essentially, they're incredibly valuable for a startup, but something that is hard to encourage your employees to do. And so I built a Slack app that essentially automated all of that. Rolled it out at the company. It was doing well, and so I thought, you know what, other companies might benefit from this. So went through an accelerator program called Pioneer. Started to sell that product a bit. So learned a lot of the foundations that I'd say Whalesync has helped me at Whalesync. But this is the first time I've gone out and raised capital. Found a co-founder, built a team. Really, I consider this my first one.
Great. Well, Whalesync wants to simplify the process of syncing data between SaaS applications. You co-founded this with your co-founder, Curtis Fonger, who is the CEO and began his career at Microsoft working on OneDrive file syncing, and sold his first startup, a no-code website builder, Appitos, to Google in 2014. How did you find each other as co-founders? I think it's maybe the most important decision you make as a company, as a marriage, as friendships, is your partners. How did you guys find each other?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll say I couldn't agree with you more. You realize very quickly that partnership is really the foundation of the business, and I'm just so fortunate that Curtis and I were able to team up. But it's a really funny story, actually. Curtis and I actually officially co-founded Whalesync before ever meeting in person.
Wow.
So yeah, which is a crazy sign of the times. But yeah, we met in a post-COVID world through Y Combinator has a program called Co-Founder Match. That's almost like a Tinder for co-founders, and we were one of the first people on the tool. Literally, I think like the first day or two that it opened up, we were trying it out, and we had each met dozens of other potential co-founders. We were both excited to try to find a partner, and yeah, once we matched, we really just hit it off. It was kind of night and day between that and everyone else we had spoken with.
That's amazing. You swipe right, you find a co-founder. You swipe left, you find your ex-co-founder. I mean, it's
Wild in retrospect.
yeah. You might be the first person I've talked to that's actually found the founder that way. And with online matchmaking and dating, and really, there's a lot you can do with that type of platform. And to bring company founders together, I think is amazing. The inspiration of, I think, is really interesting. I was reading on TechCrunch, the market and the landscape, and most companies use 50 applications, to help run their companies. Maybe it's much more than that. What's the premise behind Whalesync? What problem are you solving for companies that are looking to use a product or service like yours?
Let me give you the quick story on how we found this idea in the first place. So
Yeah.
we were both really excited about the no-code space. Like you mentioned, Curtis had previously built a no-code company and sold it to Google. And so we were exploring the different ideas there. And over the course of hundreds of conversations with builders and no-coders, the thing that kept popping up was people were using Zapier in this sort of crazy way. They're basically setting up like 20, 25-step zaps or automations, if you're not familiar with the tool, essentially just to sync data between two different apps. So they wanted to keep data, let's say in Airtable, constantly in sync with data in Webflow. We saw this enough times that we just said, you know what, there needs to be a no-code data syncing tool, not just an automation tool. And maybe to put it another way, Zapier is, again, amazing tool. We use it today. But it was built a long time ago. And we said, what would Zapier look like if we were building it from scratch, back in 2021? And so we take a data first approach to data automation. We literally sync your data bidirectionally across tools. And what this enables is it lets teams essentially use the best in breed tools for whatever they want to accomplish. So just as one quick example, we have customers that'll take HubSpot data and two-way sync it with Airtable, and then hand over that Airtable to people that are on the sales team. And so that way, anyone on the team can update, manage customer records through a tool that they love, like Airtable.
It sounds like a great solution. What's been the response of that product, and who are the buyers of that product?
Yeah. So first of all, on the response side, we've been really happy. We now have a couple hundred customers today and growing every month. And so really, we're excited with where we've started and excited about what's next. Taking it into the thousands and hopefully hundreds of thousands one day. But yeah, in terms of who the buyer is, it is a horizontal product, and really depending on which apps you're connecting, we have a bunch of different types of buyers and users. But maybe to like summarize or generalize, that the buyer usually is the builder or the operations person on the team. So whether that's sort of the RevOps lead for a sales team, or maybe the like head of engineering on the developer side, whoever is kind of responsible for building and creating internal tools or connecting your apps is the buyer for us.
I always like that term, no code or low code based applications. It makes it feel like you don't have to be an engineer to use the product, where you can log in and just go to town with whatever the solution provides. How technical is the product you guys built in terms of from a user's perspective?
Yeah, so we really modeled in this sense ourselves off of Zapier, in that if you think about that tool, really anyone, whether they're technical or not, can come in and start to use it. And that's really what we want with Whalesync. You don't have to be a developer. It does help to have a understanding of like, how do tables work and what are reference fields or linked records, things like that. But yeah, in general, it's operations people that often have never written a line of code before in their life.
That sounds like it would be really easy to use. There's competitors out there in the landscape, and I know that there's a lot of need for something like this. There's a lot of companies that are creating products that are product led, self-serve. You don't have to talk to anybody to try it. How have you guys positioned your product?
Yes. So we've very much gone down that path. We are fully self-serve. You can just sign up and start using the product for 90% of our plans. We do offer business and enterprise plans that are a little more hands-on. But no, most of our customers come in today and just start using the product. They learn as they go, and certainly reach out to us if they have questions. But we've always wanted to, or modeled ourselves off of those Airtables, the Notions, the Webflows of the world that we believe have done an amazing job of just giving a lot of power to that user to get started.
Good strategy. As a founder myself and as an entrepreneur, you start with an idea, you bring a product to market. Sometimes you got to make changes and pivots and multiple pivots. When you started your company a couple of years back and where you're at today, has there been any major pivots you look back on and say, yeah, that was something we had to make a change to really become what we are today? Or what's been your process of navigating pivots?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, we have that initial pivot, right? Of before we discovered this idea, we were exploring different ones in the no-code space around sort of the front end and whatnot. But once we sort of settled on this is the product and this is the problem we're trying to solve around data syncing, we haven't had any major companies shifting pivots in the last, again, 2.5 years now. That being said, it's like every month, every 2 months, we're constantly evaluating what should we build, who should we target, and in a horizontal tool like we have, there are so many different paths that we could go on, whether it's focusing on, let's say, CRM connectors or focusing on database connectors or content management, building features that are more focused for developers or building features that are more focused for no coders. And so there's a million micro decisions that have gone on over the last 2.5 years that could have taken the product in a very different direction. But when we use the term pivot, I would say we've probably stuck pretty much to the original vision.
In today's market, what's keeping you up at night with your company and where you want to take it?
I love that question. So today, and when you say in today's market, that makes me very much think about 2023. Things are not zero interest rate, growing constantly, money thrown around all the time. And so for us, we're really trying to expand more and more into that mid-market and upper part of the market. We have a handful of really awesome companies that are there. We work with Webflow, Ramp, Alchemy. And so as we want to serve more and more of those companies, we have to be conscious of the fact that in this market, you really need to justify the value that you provide. And so, we're laser focused on being sort of a indispensable part of the stack for those mid-market companies.
As a company, online, and you go to focus on bigger, more enterprise type organizations, what's the strategy that's working for you to get in the door? What is getting you in that uncomfortable zone to really reach out, make those contacts, really sell? Like what's working for you to get introduced there?
Yeah, so I can tell you what's working, and maybe just to put this in context, I'd say this is very much where we're trying to learn the most. Being a very product focused team, my background as a PM and my co-founder is a product builder as well. We really started from this premise of how do we build something that's amazing? How do we put it in the hands of people through self-serve? And then we'll essentially iterate on the GTM, go to market, from there. And so today, what's worked for us is still taking advantage of that self-serve aspect of the product. If we go out and just try to do sort of the old school sale, look at decks and whatnot, which, we've experimented with, we get a lot of, times when we're talking to these builders, like, hey, this is great. I'm so excited. Like, let me try it. I want to give it a shot. And that's when they really experience the value and get excited about the product. And so for us, the thing that we're going to be leaning into over the next year, 2 years and selling this more is getting in the door, explaining our value, but continuing to put it in the hands of people and let them experience it themselves.
I think it's a great strategy. Another strategy that we've been engaged with, have learned, and actually have understood a lot of companies now moving in this direction is as a SaaS platform or online company. You take Microsoft, for example, they go out into new markets all the time and they don't hire salespeople to do this. They hire companies that go out and take their product, understand the value proposition, drive that into a new market in middle America or wherever it might be, generate, millions of dollars in revenue, come back with that data and then tell them, here's the playbook, here's what's worked. And they cut their risk down in terms of what the expenses would look like if they hired a full-time team to sell that product or service. And they also get the data of what worked well, and then they can build a team around it. So that's a service that we have worked with a lot of companies that are using. And I think it's It's also something to think about for any company out there, if you're an online business, to explore, because the numbers net out, they make sense, and also it reduces your risk as a company as you look to innovate and drive your ARR, or get into new markets. Having said all that, as an entrepreneur, you have to take risks, you got to experiment, you have to test, you have to come back and tell and understand what the data is telling you, and then from there implement whatever strategy you want to do going forward. And none of that, by the way, happens without a little bit of fear and having courage to take that data and make some tough decisions. What's been a moment for you in your career so far, in your journey, in the startup journey, that's taken a lot of courage that you remember well, when the fear was there, but you made it anyway and you came out the other side?
This is a great question. And by the way, just on what you mentioned before, such a fascinating idea around sort of spinning up that sales team to reduce costs and find things with less risk. But to answer your question directly, one decision I think back on a lot that, again, as you describe it, it's very much this learning process. You got to put yourself out there, try something, and then see what the data says. Was our approach back earlier this year. So being a horizontal data syncing tool, we really wanted to essentially connect, or still want to connect, data across all the apps that you use. And so our first thought back in January was, hey, this thing's really working. People are getting a lot of value. We've got 3-4 connectors that we sync data across. Well, let's try to get that to 12. Let's try to get the 15 as soon as we can, right? And so we actually built out a really small team of contract developers to help us build this really quickly. And we pretty much kind of put the pedal to the metal for 3-4 months, and kind of exploded on a relative sense our number of connectors up from 3 to 10, very quickly. And at the time, again, everything made sense. We invested into it. That seemed like a strong strategy. And what we quickly realized in putting this back out there was, hey, people come to Whalesync because we solve your problems really, really well, really deeply. And so when we put out those connectors more quickly, we didn't have to go as deep as we had in those first few. And so we just got a ton of requests on hey, we want to, we'd love to do a little bit more here. I'd love to do a little bit more there. And so we kind of decided to quickly kind of reverse, again, listen to customer feedback. We spun down that team and took that same amount of resources to trying to improve the connectors we have. And that's, again, a total reversal from what we thought we'd be doing a year ago. But to your point, it's just, look, you try these things, you listen to customers, you put it out there, you get more feedback, you try again. And that's sort of the approach we'll continue to take.
Yeah. You talked about contractors. I want to just go back to that a little bit. As a team today, what's your company look like, team-wise, team size? Are you remote? Are you distributed?
Yeah, we're super lean, intentionally. So today it's myself, my co-founder, and 2 full stack engineers. We're actually just about to hire 2 more. Of the 4 million we've raised, $2 million out over the summer. So we'll be putting a little bit of investment to expand a bit. But in general, we've always felt like until you get to a certain stage of the company, probably raising a Series A or Series B, the fewer people you have, the more nimble you are, and the more you can kind of respond to market and product conditions. So we've enjoyed that kind of small, high-performing team has been the goal. And then to your other bit, we're fully remote. So I'm in California. My co-founder's in Florida. We work out of a virtual office every day, and again, really kind of coming back to our roots, being born post-COVID and, before YC, meeting my co-founder online. That's always been how we've worked and enjoyed it.
I like that. Being born post-COVID. Sounds like a movie. It's a cultural change for sure. And for a company operationally, it's also a big change for companies that were prior to COVID, having to work through how things operate today. I always believe remote first can be very, not just cost effective, but also opens up your options of where you build, whether it's locally in the US or internationally. Have you gone international yet? Have you thought about, growth that way, or is that already in the plans?
We've gone international with contracting. So we've had different contractors, as well as our virtual assistant who's with us today and amazing, is international as well. So yeah, we've definitely really been happy with the benefit that it gives us to be fully remote.
As a company, I know you're smaller but growing. What type of culture are you looking to build, and what's great to work for you?
I love this question as a company that's actively hiring. It's awesome to be able to speak to this. So a couple of things that we really care about and think, make us unique. So first of all, like I mentioned, by keeping the team really small, we have a really, really high bar for the people in the team. They basically have to be able to work at this stage, at least front end, back end, directly with customers, kind of, really full stack. And so for the right type of person that, just loves that, loves taking on ownership and really kind of owning different pieces of the product, we see this as hopefully a pretty exciting place to be. And we pair that with the fact that our product in general is a very technical one. So data syncing is just a hard engineering problem. And so again, the type of person that loves working with people and loves tackling those hard things, as opposed to, let's say, just building a CRUD app, is the one that we love working with and would love to talk to.
Sounds amazing. As a company, and really as a leader of your company and co-founder, what's a lesson that you can share with other founders that might not have taken that step yet to start their own company that you've learned that you felt was priceless? Could have been pre-Y Combinator, during Y Combinator, post-Y Combinator, or just as a company today?
The two things, I'll give you two if that's okay. The two that really stick out in my mind, and they're not novel, right? They're just hard to truly internalize, I'd say, is being really ruthless about speed and ruthless about the quality of the people that you work with. Because at the end of the day, if you have an amazing, amazing team that's moving fast, the market can change, the product can change, your customers can give you different feedback, but eventually you'll build something amazing. You take either of those things out of the equation and you're in trouble, in many of the cases. And just to kind of lean into that, or what I'm saying there is, it's really easy to have reasons that say, hey, like this thing should take 6 weeks. This thing should take a month, 2 months, whatever. And it is much harder to push yourself to say, how could we make this happen in a week, a day? Right? What would we have to cut? How would we have to rethink this to make that possible? And so, keeping that constantly top of mind, no matter where you are, if you've started the company already, or even if you're pre-starting the company, why not launch it tomorrow? What could you do that would give you more access or more data now? So anyway, again, nothing too novel there, but just trying to internalize that constantly has been helpful for me.
What's next on the roadmap for Whalesync? I know you're still building and growing, but if you look into this next year, more enterprise clients, sure. Anything on the technical side that you're really excited about?
Oh my gosh, so much. Let's see. Maybe just to give the high level, as you mentioned, we're trying to support more and more mid-market companies. So what's that mean? It means things like scaling, right? Supporting people that have millions of records and that need to keep in sync, as opposed to, let's say, hundreds of thousands like we have today. That means adding new connectors, integrations. We're working on a Salesforce connector at the moment. Other ones like that support that mid-market. And then I'll give you a really specific one, which we're just thrilled about. We're about to launch a feature called Whalesync Rewind. So basically what our users will be able to do is pick a point in time, let's say 24 hours ago, a week ago, and see all the changes that Whalesync has made and undo all of them, right? Essentially rewind it. And this gives our users, or we believe what this will give our users, is just ultimate flexibility, and ability to keep their data in sync, know that things change, undo, be really nimble. So anyway, that one's a fun one that we're excited to get out in the somewhat near future.
That sounds really, really cool. You're on an amazing journey. And what I like about where you guys are at is it's really earlier stage, but you're seeing success. And the path going forward looks like there's a lot there to tackle and opportunities to grow. So I'd love to stay in contact with you and maybe do a check back to see where things are in 6-12 months, and kind of see where it goes. As we wrap up here, Matthew, I just want to share my thoughts about having you come on. I really appreciate you and spending your time with us, and also for the listeners out there listening, appreciate you taking your time to listen to this story and Matt's journey here. And as we go forward, my name is Jake Aaron Villarreal, the host of this show. Excited to chat with you about other stories in the future, and look forward to catching up with you on the next episode. Until then, we'll talk soon. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible, and for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.